Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Mike Wells. I'm with Atticus and today's topic is the aha moment. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Atticus if you're not familiar with us. Atticus was founded in 1989 to provide some in-depth, ongoing support and accountability programs for attorneys and law firms that help you increase your gross revenues and personal income, reduce that stress and the number of hours you're spending in the office, develop a greater sense of career satisfaction, and of course allow more time for your personal family and interests. Today's speaker is Mark Powers, who is the founder of Atticus, and he has been coaching attorneys on practice management marketing for well over 25 years. He is a top legal coach in the United States and a dynamic speaker. He is also the author to several books, and I'm going to show you some of those here. We have Time Management for Attorneys, which is one of our most popular titles, How Good Attorneys Become Great Rainmakers, and our most recent edition, Hire Slow, Fire Fast. Before we begin, I have a few logistics to go over with you. First, we'll have a question and answer session at the end, and as well as Mark being on the line, we also have practice advisor Steve Riley listening in, and Steve will be there with Mark at the end of today's call to answer any questions or help coach you through an issue. But to ask a question, there are a couple of methods you could do so. First is to use the chat function on your GoToWebinar dashboard and send a message to the event organizer. That's me. And if you would like to have your question be anonymous, you can indicate so in your message and I will not read your name. You can also click the hand icon to indicate that you have a question or comment, and we'll call on you at the end of the session. And when I do, I will unmute you so that you can be heard asking your question or making your comment. Another issue is to get some pen and paper at the ready, because if I know Mark, he's going to be pointing you to one of our websites, atticusadvantage.com. So you might as well write that down. That's atticusadvantage.com. And without further ado, I'd like to hand things over to Mark. Mark, take it away.
Good. Thank you, Mike. Welcome, everyone. So this is the webinar is called the Aha Moment. And from my perspective, this is probably going to be one of the more significant or important webinars that you attend all year. And if you sincerely get what we're covering here today, it will change your practice, and it just might change your life. So that being said, we're going to have about 45 minutes to nail this conversation around the aha moment. So we'll be drilling down on every strategy, and quite frankly, if we don't get this, if we don't get the understanding of the aha moment, then it's going to be very difficult to get and understand some of the strategies. So here's the agenda. We're going to talk about the aha moment. So this is the critical realization that you'll need to understand to grow your practice, gain a competitive advantage, and take better care of your clients. And in the background, to make this a truly powerful segment for you, what I'm going to ask you to do is start actively looking for the most valuable insight, your biggest takeaway, the action that you could take out of this conversation. So don't wait until the end and start thinking back. As we're going through it, I want you to actively seek it out. And then at the end of the session, I'll make some recommendations for you that I think will make a difference from doing this for a while. So we called this the Aha Moment webinar. We didn't call it the Think About It webinar. And why we say that is that learning and thinking about the things that we talk about at Atticus is not enough. You really have to take action. And I'm grateful that you're on this webinar and that you're listening to this and you get an opportunity to hear it. But I'm also expecting you to take some action out of this webinar. So at the end of this, if you just think about it, that's going to end up being your booby prize. Steve likes to call it creative procrastination. And so I'm going to be able to test whether you're actually doing something or not. And I've got to tell you, I don't want to put pressure on you with this, but it's how we operate here. We want to make sure that something happens, that you're not wasting your time, and we're making sure that we change something. So in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to have I'm going to add an accountability element to this call. And so without some level of accountability, we know that nothing really happens. So you've committed to being here, and Atticus is committed to having what we call a client service advisor. So write these names down: Larry, Jeff, or Daniel. They're client service advisors. I'm going to have one of them call you. And what I want them to do is discuss your progress that you take out of this webinar. So at the end of the session, I'll give you some recommendations on things you can do to get progress. But I want you to be able to actually take some action, discuss that with Larry, Jeff, or Daniel. So I'll say one other thing about this before I get into the aha moment. If Jeff or Daniel or Larry don't mention it, write this down: something called a practice growth diagnostic. If they don't mention it to you, tell them that Mark said I should absolutely do one of these, because I believe every attorney, every single attorney, if they haven't done a practice growth diagnostic, should do one. And I'll explain a little bit more about a practice growth diagnostic at the end. So let's get into the aha moment. So the definition, if we looked up in Webster, would find that it's a moment of sudden realization, sudden insight, recognition, or comprehension. And it's an insight or a realization that once you have it, after you've had it, you'll never think or act the same. You'll operate with greater awareness and effectiveness in life. So we're looking for an aha moment in our practice that can shift and change things so that we operate with greater awareness and greater effectiveness in our practice and our life. With that being said, here's something I'd like you to do in the background. I'd like you to write down what you think the aha moment is. I'm kind of curious how many of you might already understand it or have it. So write it down on a piece of paper, what you think the aha moment is. Take a second to do that. What do you think the realization that what's the realization that you think I'm going to talk about that will change everything about your practice? Go ahead and write that down. And so I'm going to give you an example of an aha moment in almost everyone's life. So I want to distinguish it, pull it out a little bit, and then take it into your law practice. So almost everyone on this call, and I'm assuming everyone, but I don't want to be too presumptuous, has had an experience of riding a bike. And I want you to think back of the first time you successfully rode a bicycle and you experienced balance. Now, balance, once you experience it, it changes everything about riding bikes, doesn't it? You think you can never not know balance after you have it. You can ride a bike 10 years later and you can pick up balance very quickly. But an interesting thing about balance is you can read about it, you can listen to lectures on balance, and you can even think about balance. But it won't make any difference, will it? Not until you actually decide to ride the bike, get on the bike, and experience balance will you have that aha moment regarding balance. So I want to say that again. When we're going to jump this into your practice in a moment, but I want us to get that there's this aha moment, and it comes about because you decided to take action. You got on, in this case, the bike, and when you got on it, you found balance. And you wouldn't have found it any other way but making that decision and getting on the bike, would you? So I have another interesting way of looking at this aha moment, and we call it the eureka moment. And so I say this because if you stumble into this distinction that I'm going to talk about in the practice, it's sort of like aha. But if you're actively seeking it out, if you're actively seeking out a goal or a distinction, like trying to ride the bike and get balance, you have the aha moment, but it's better defined as, it's better defined as eureka. I got it. I found it. I found what I was looking for. And this is a key to shifting your mindset about making a new decision about the future. So there are a lot of opportunities for aha moments in the law firm, aren't there? For example, the first time you fired a client is a little bit of an aha moment. It's like, this is my practice. I own it. I can't work with everyone. The first time, many of you, if you remember that time that you hired an employee, the first time you did it, it was fearful. You didn't think you'd be able to afford it. You didn't think you had enough work, but you hired them, and it shifted something. It said, I can afford this. I can make it work. So there are a number of small aha moments in the practice. But I assert to you, there's only one aha moment that will give you a competitive advantage over 80% of your competitors. And I'll say it a little bit differently. 80% of your marketplace, 80% of your competitors don't get it, which means if you do, it shifts everything and gives you a, well, I'll say it again, a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And one of my concerns is once I give you the aha moment, that some of you will get it as an intellectual experience, sort of like, oh, I get it, like thinking about balance, but you won't really get the aha moment. So one other thing about this aha moment, there's cost of not getting it, not comprehending it, not working on this aha moment. And if you don't get it, and feel free to write these down, you'll find yourself you're at the mercy of your competitors, and you have very little advantage in the marketplace. You'll find that you can't control or grow the practice properly. You always sort of go up a little bit, then come back down. It's this constant cycling where I go up and I come down in my income, in my stress, in the hours I work. I feel like I have control, then I have no control. You'll find that your income and your revenue are stifled if you don't get this. And from my experience, and Steve's on the call as well, and Steve, I know that this is his experience, is that we're destined to long days, lots of interruptions, and high stress levels. And again, this is 80% of our community is experiencing this. And we deal with low-level clients and uninspired matters. We get very little vacation, and we find the firm is very dependent on us. So there's a loss of freedom without this distinction. There's a loss of independence, a loss of control, high turnover. You have a very difficult time keeping great talent. And eventually, and we know this about the profession, we see lots and lots of burnout. So as we dig into this distinction in this aha moment, let's look at it from, I'm going to have you look at it from a couple of different perspectives. The first is, how do you view your role in the law firm? So it's a fairly simple question, but how do you view, what do you think your role is in the law firm? Do you see yourself as a lawyer doing substantive work, and the management issues, the hiring, the firing, the collections, the marketing, are all major distractions from your primary responsibilities? And so that sort of looks like this graph. Our lawyer work, our we call it, and I mean no, I don't mean anything negative about this, but it's a way to describe in business. The lawyer does the technical work of the business in this case, or the substantive work. Is that the vast majority of it, 90% of our role is lawyer, and everything outside of that, the owner, the manager roles, are distractions. If you tend to look at your role as primarily the lawyer, there's nothing wrong with it. There's certainly a role for that in every law firm. We call this the great lawyer mindset. Write that down. The great lawyer mindset. We're going to come back to this, and we're going to address it in a minute. So the other way, and think no balance, and I want you to think we're crossing over from no distinction to having the aha moment, a distinction. Or you could also view your role in a different way. You could see yourself as a lawyer that is building a business that does the practice of law. I'll say that again. You could see yourself as a lawyer who is building a practice building a business that does the practice of law. This is very different. Here, the owner and the manager, the person that does the hiring, the firing, the collections, the marketing, are considered part of my primary function. They take a much bigger, they take a larger focus. They take a, I develop skills in those areas. I actively am working on managing and running the firm, and I don't see it as a distraction. So if you see yourself primarily as the lawyer technician, then what we would say is that we're working in the law firm. And I'll distinguish it and pull that out for you. But this is the, if you get this, we're starting to broach or carve into the aha moment. If you see yourself as the owner, the manager, so I'm a lawyer, but I own and manage a law firm, or I own a business that does the law firm, then I work on the firm. If you have this latter distinction, and you truly get it, you have the aha moment. I am working on the firm, not just in it. And if you get this distinction, you step up into what we call the practice growth mindset. Very, very important. Let's dig through it a little bit more. So if you're a lawyer who is building a job, you are, let me ask that again. Are you a lawyer who's building a job, or are you a lawyer who's building a business that provides legal services? One works in the firm, the latter works on the firm. And so let's look at it a little bit more, because this is the aha moment. And I don't know if this is what you wrote down. So we are either working in the firm or we are working on the firm. And on the left, in is the great lawyer mindset. That's going to be important when I get to another stage. And you can draw this out for yourself. It's an easy diagram. Or we are in the practice growth mindset, working on the firm. So let's talk about this and dig it out a little bit more. Here, working in the firm, we focus on income. We start thinking about income. When we're working on the firm, it's very different. We're focused on a business that produces passive income. There's two things here. We focus on marketing because we know that without marketing, I'm not going to dig down into some of the strategies here, but I will tell you that without marketing, we don't get to grow the firm. So there's a constant focus on marketing. We like to say that we never, ever, 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 ever stop marketing the law firm. But there's also a focus on profits as opposed to just income. I'm looking for passive income. As a business owner working on this firm, it should produce and provide to me a return on my investment. We call that profits. And when we're working in the business, if I asked the attorney working in the business, he or she would often say, Mark, the most important thing we do here is the work. The work is the most important thing we do here. And if you ask the owner, the attorney that has the practice growth mindset, who has more of an owner entrepreneurial perspective, they would say no. It's the work of the business to produce value for the client. So it's the work of the entire organization to produce value for the client. Think about that for a second. That is very, very, very different. Certainly the work has to be done, but it's everyone's role. And I'm not going to go into why this has changed, but the marketplace has changed dramatically over the last 30 years. But we have to be thinking of producing value from the client's perspective. And when we're working on it, we say, what can we do today to make this business work better and produce more value for the client? So in the business, we focus on getting through the day. It's really just trying to survive the day. Personal boundaries are fungible, and when we're working on the business, we say that we're working on systems, processes. And I'll talk about these systems in a little bit, but we're working on our production system. We're working on our system for marketing. We're working on our system for how we manage money, our cash flow. we're working on systems, how we hire, develop, and train great employees. Very, very different. Systems will, when we're working in the firm on the great lawyer mindset, we tend to put up with a lot around employees and tolerations and issues. When we're working on it, we know that we could hire a good employee, but the system is going to make them look great to the client. And I said that when we're working in it, the great lawyer mindset, our personal boundaries are fungible. What I mean is, if I can't get the work done during the day because of the interruptions and all the issues, I can stay evenings and I can work. Or if I can't get it done during the evenings because it's not enough time and there's no interruptions, I can come in on the weekends. And pretty soon, what we find is that we've given up our evenings, our weekends, and slowly we start giving up our hobbies, we start giving up our interests, and we don't have a practice anymore. We have, the practice totally has us. When we're working on the firm, personal boundaries become critical. And so what we know here, and our experience shows that in law firms, a lot of shareholders, owners, partners are cheating the model. And what I mean by cheating is that they're covering up inefficiencies. They're covering up poor processes. They're covering up employees, C or D level employees, with their time and their life, rather than to manage the interruptions, rather than manage the employee problem, rather than manage the financial issues. They'll give up their time, their evenings, their weekends to cover it up. I hope that makes sense, because when we're working on it, this becomes a critical issue. It forces us, having our boundaries means that it's going to force us to manage issues and not the other way around. When we're in the great lawyer mindset, working in the firm, we find that the firm is dependent on the shareholder, the owner, or the partner. We call this the heroic leadership style. And I'll talk about it again in a moment, because I want you to get this, is here there is no problem too small that the attorney can't jump in and get involved in it, or there's no opportunity that is too small that the owner can't get involved. Everything revolves around them. If they go away, the cash flow goes away. Everyone goes to them for every problem, every issue, trying to solve it. So we don't really have a business. We have a job, and the job is highly dependent on this heroic leader. We call it a heroic leader because if it was a storyline, once the hero from the story is taken away, so goes the story. And in this case, once you're taking away from the business, so goes the business. So we don't have something that outlasts us. In the practice growth mindset, we've stepped into what we call a post-heroic leadership style, meaning we start delegating better. We start to kill off the hero, us being the hero. We make the employees the hero. We make our partners the hero. We make the firm the hero. But we start killing off ourselves as the hero. And we actively create what we call talent vacuums, where when we have an attorney, we'll often have them take a vacation. I know it sounds incredible to get a 1 week, 2 week vacation. We'll often have them take more. But what it does is, if they're not there to solve the problem, and they do have talent there, it allows the talent to step up and develop. Otherwise, we see in firms, we see a lot of squashing of that talent because we're micromanaging and staying there all the time. Another way to look at this whole conversation, the great lawyer mindset would come in the morning. They would turn on all the lights in the office. They'd turn on their computer, and they would open a pile of files and say, what work has to be done today? What work do I have to do today? It's usually the first question. And the attorney that has the practice growth mindset, what we call the entrepreneurial perspective or mindset, their first question, and write this down, this is a good question to write down. They would say, how must this business work today for me to, and fill in the blank. So how must this business work today for me to go home on time? How must this business work today if I was to double the value we give our clients? How must this business work today if I'm to take out a 20, 30, 35% profit at the end of the year? What do I have to do today? Very different questions. One saying, what work do I have to do today? The other saying, how must this business work today? If you can get that, and you can actively decide to do that every day and work on that every day, you will have got the aha moment. And I'm going to dig into this and I'm going to take a look at it from one other perspective to have you get a better look at this aha moment. But I've used the word mindset here because what we've recognized is that your eyes and your ears, your eyes will only see and your ears will only hear what your mindset is looking for. So if I'm looking for work to do today and I'm in the great lawyer mindset, trust me, there is no shortage of work to do. And there's no shortage of disruptions and distress and interruptions. But if I'm shifted the mindset and I'm working on the business and I'm asking a different question, I'm saying, how must this business work today? What system must I work on today? I can now start to see, oh, I do have systems. They may be dysfunctional, but I have systems. So what's a marketing system? What could I do that I could have repeatable process or behavior that will bring clients knocking on the door on a regular basis? How must I work on my staffing system for me to attract and retain great employees? Can you see the difference? Your eyes will only see and your ears will only hear what your mindset is looking for. And if you can step into the practice growth mindset, you will have had that eureka or that aha moment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a look at the aha moment from one other place, one other perspective, and then I'm going to give you some suggestions, some recommendations to take away from this call for you to really employ this aha moment. So some of you may have seen this. Certainly if you're an Atticus, if you've been working with one of the Atticus practice advisors, you're currently in one of our programs, you would have seen this. It's called a strategic pathway. And it helps us see and determine where we are in the competitive marketplace. I'll say it another way. It shows how we can move through the pathway to get a strategic competitive advantage in the marketplace. So again, this isn't a call designed to take you through the entire pathway. So I'm going to talk about some key things that'll help you see this aha moment in another way to hopefully you get it. So you can see that there are three tiers, and you're welcome to try to draw this out. But there's three tiers in this, and they represent the three different mindsets. You might even say some people would say this is the stages that you go through or the mindsets that you have to employ to get a competitive advantage. And I'm going to focus on the first and the second. So the first, and you've heard us say this term a couple of times already, is the great lawyer mindset. And in the great lawyer mindset, we know what? We know that our attorney is looking for and usually seeking out what work has to be done. And so they have a series of strategies that they use at this level. They have results that they get, and they have some traps. I'm going to briefly talk about those and then take you to the next level. So I'm going to break out this great lawyer mindset so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So we said there were strategies, results, and then we said there were blind spots. Let's talk about the strategies. The first strategies, and this makes perfect sense, at this stage, what we really want to do is be a great lawyer. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a necessity. It is the ticket to get into having a law firm, a business that does the practice of law. But we got to be careful because we can get stuck here. And there's, at some point, being a great lawyer, you don't get additional returns on it. So what I mean by that is, after a certain number of CLEs and certifications and honors, at some point there's a marginal return on some of the results you want. Here the other strategy is work harder. If I really work hard at this level, the mindset says it's all going to turn out. And I can promise you, we always want to work hard, but it's what we're working at. Are we working hard in a smart fashion, or are we working hard just to keep moving forward? And we talked about this. At this strategy, and I wouldn't say it's fully conscious, but they developed this heroic leadership mindset. And it is this leadership style, this heroic leadership style, that's keeping most people trapped, most attorneys trapped at this stage. So here, everything revolves around them. They are all arrows point to you as the leader of the organization, as the person that gets everything done. There's no answers, no problems I can't resolve. But here are the results we see here. In the marketplace, 80%, again, remember, 80% of the marketplace has this mindset. They have, and that means 80% of the marketplace has stagnant or falling incomes. They're working way too long of hours. They're not getting their full weekends. They're taking little time off. They found themselves addicted to their technology. They're always checking in. They get very little mental break from it. They find themselves with endless days of high stress, interruptions, and they're very vulnerable to market forces. And what we mean by that is things change. A tax law could change. We could have tort reform. We could have many, many different things change in the marketplace. And they're vulnerable because they're so busy doing it that they can't look up to see. So we said they had blind spots. One of the blind spots is, I don't know what I don't know. And what that means is, I don't know, often I don't know that this is a business. And I don't know if I continue to work these hours and I continue to work harder and harder, I'm going to get fewer and fewer results. I don't know that if I reclaim my weekends and my evenings, that my income is going to go up, my quality of life is going to go up. Here they have a blind spot, and we talked about this. Again, I'm trying to look at this aha moment from a couple of different perspectives. Here we said they're working in it, doing it, as opposed to the next stage, and they lack personal boundaries. So the way we break through this is that we have to make a critical aha, we have to have a critical aha moment. And a better way to say this, and I would write it down, is this is a critical decision. Here, to get out of this mindset, to get out of this stage, you're going to have to, you're going to have to make a decision to change. And once we do that, and I'll show you that decision a little bit more detail, but we have to make the decision fundamentally that this is a business. And that if I run it like a business, I'm going to be able to take better care of my clients. I'm going to be able to have much more control over my personal freedom. And I'm going to bring out far more profit and personal income from this practice. But the critical decision is I'm making a decision right now to run it like a business. And that's going to shift. And once you start doing that, you experience that aha moment, or in this case, if we're actively looking for it, that eureka moment of I'm in control. I'm working on this, not in it. And I can see how I can get all these other things affected. You will never think the same afterwards. So as we leave this stage, we enter the practice growth mindset. So it's another, I like to talk about it in two ways. You'll hear me use two words. One is a stage, a developmental stage, but it's really what's behind that is a mindset, a way of thinking that the attorney has taken on an entrepreneurial perspective about the business. And so I'm going to break this one out so you can see what happens here. We won't go beyond this because this is the most important one. By the way, if you're keeping track, the bottom at the great lawyer stage, it represents 80% of the market. The practice growth mindset represents about 15% of the marketplace. So 15% of your competitors are operating at this stage. So we said there's strategies. I'm going to put them all out and come back. So we talked about this. At the great lawyer mindset, it's in the business here. They've made the decision as a business and they're working on it. They've put their focus on working on marketing and revenue as a primary focus. They never, ever, ever stop marketing because they know that it gives them the control to be able to be more selective with clients. I can't be selective, and when I say selective, I got to be able to turn down business, say no to new clients. And the only way I can do that is if more people are knocking at the door. So it gives me control to be able to raise case values. And this is one of the things that if Steve and I are working with a law firm or any of the practice advisors, what we're looking at, we're trying to see if the average value per case in the firm is going up over time. And most attorneys aren't even measuring that. But the average case or the average value per case tells us that the firm is being managed well. And we should see that going up a certain percentage every year. We said they become far more selective with clients, but also with their team. And this makes an enormous difference for you when you can be more selective with their team. They end up building a solid team, and they build a sustainable infrastructure. So what's a sustainable infrastructure? A sustainable infrastructure is when we have a system for production, for staffing, for cash flow, for marketing. These are infrastructures, and we've got people managing it or we're managing it. Here's the difference. We see big shifts in the results at this level. We see more personal freedom, fewer hours, more vacation, good revenue growth every year, and good profits. So if I'm coming in and looking at your firm, when I say good profit, at a minimum, we want to see a 35% profit margin. And that means for every dollar, we want 35% of every dollar, we want 35 cents being returned to the shareholders. And by the way, we're not going to dig into it here. That is above and beyond shareholder salary. And I'm not going to explain that here because we don't have the time for it. But trust me, what we're working on is 35% above shareholder salary. And that might sound a little off for some of you, but we can, if you're in a program or you do a practice growth diagnostic. By the way, I will say it again here, if you want to see where you are and you want to assess where you are in this process, write that practice growth diagnostic down. It's critical. We see better clients, dependable teams, and in some cases, we'll see double revenues, and we see, I know this sounds hard to believe, but if you talk to Atticus graduates, you'll see that there are people doing this. We have them take a 1-month sabbatical from their practice. Now, why would we do that? Because it allows us to test the systems, create vacuums for talent to show up. We don't do it for the attorney, we do it for the firm, and it makes an enormous difference. And they're successful by anyone's standard. I think that if you saw an attorney that were doing these sort of things, you'd say they're wildly successful. But even here, they have blind spots. If they're not careful, their income is still based on, they've raised their rates, they've raised their case values, they've raised their retainers, and they're doing much better. But if they're not careful, they've become an Uber technician, meaning I'm still doing the vast majority of the legal work, but I'm doing it at a higher value. Here, if they're not careful and they don't break through that heroic mentality, they maintain that, if they don't break through the post-heroic mentality, they end up with this heroic leadership style, and the organization is still dependent on them. They don't build a succession plan. They don't build a process for them to really break away from the firm. And the other thing that happens here is they become so successful at this stage, they become a little comfortable and a little arrogant. And it's the kiss of death sometimes because they have no big challenges. They lack a compelling reason to keep playing a bigger game, keep working on the firm. So what happens here is they get comfortable and they stop working on the firm. They forgot what got them here. So these are some of the dangers, some of the blind spots. I put this here because it's fascinating. So you all probably know the myth of Sisyphus. He was punished by the Greek gods to push a rock up a hill until it either got too heavy, it kept growing, it got too heavy and rolled back down on him, and he'd have to start all over. And this is what it feels like to many small firms when they're trying to build a practice. They grow it a little bit, they get some people on their team, they get some technology, they get some employees, and pretty soon it just gets too heavy and it crashes down. And at some point they just give up. So we want to be careful and watch out for that. And that's why we talk about, and you'll hear us say it over and over again, the 4 cornerstones of a healthy practice. And those are the processes and the systems, the cash flow systems, the client development systems, the marketing, staffing systems, and time management systems, what we stay focused on every day. So if you're not actively working on these areas, you're probably not experienced the aha moment. It might be just an intellectual think about it process for you. If we haven't made a decision to build processes and systems and work on breaking through this heroic mentality, then you're probably still haven't got it. Let me say it another way. You know there's balance out there. You know that people can ride bikes. You understand it all, but you're just not doing it. And it comes back to this, that we haven't made a decision. I'll jump into that. So those, you'll see that there's the process takes us through the great lawyer mindset, the practice growth mindset, and then there's some will jump up into the make a mastery decision. And a mastery decision says, I'm going to continue, I'm doing great, but I'm going to continue to work on this because I'm committed to excellence. I'm committed to doing something terrific here, having an organization that's extraordinary. And they jump up into the market leader mindset. So I'm not going to break out for the purposes of our call. There's probably another 45 minutes at least that we could talk about this strategic pathway, the key strategies for you to move through this, the things that keep pulling you back. But I just want you to understand that this is the importance of that critical decision, that critical aha moment, is to break through that great lawyer mindset and get into the practice growth. So I said it starts with a decision. And what's the impact of a decision? Well, once we decide anything in our life, so once we decide that we're going to ride a bike, or once we decide that we're going to build a business that provides extraordinary legal services to the community and serves my life and my staff's life and my family's life, it brings focus. I start to shift. It creates energy. I start to get excited. It's a difference from just doing to now I'm excited about something. And you start to see, I haven't got this yet. I'm not there yet. I've got obstacles I've got to work on. But it gets a little exciting. These obstacles are no longer just things that are distractions or crushing you. They become opportunities and things I need to work on. And you find yourself eliciting a couple of different emotions. Sometimes I'm excited, and sometimes it's fear when you confront the decision to do one of these things, whether it's a decision to ride the bike or it's a decision to work on the business and build something extraordinary here. You might ask, am I worthy of this challenge? So I said this is a critical decision. And this is it. Write this down. This is what you're deciding. If you're going to really get the aha moment, it's going to start with a decision. And I'm deciding that I will run my practice like a business. I am responsible for how it works and how it grows. I will enter and stay and build my infrastructure to stay in that practice growth stage. I am going to be seen as a pro in running my practice and working on it versus just doing it every day, just so I can pay the mortgage. No, we're working on it to do something extraordinary. I've committed myself to this course of action, and I am open to learning, and I am open to change. If you get this, if you work on it from this perspective, and you make this decision, everything changes. Your mindset changes, and you start thinking from the practice growth mindset. Now, it doesn't mean we're there. We still got to do things. We've still got to make things happen. So we're coming down to a couple of things for this conversation, and I'm going to give you some key questions to take away, because we don't want this to be the think about it webinar. So I want to start out with, what decisions have you made about your practice? After this webinar, I'd like to know what decisions you've made about your webinar. And I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to have either Jeff, Larry, or Daniel give you a call. And if your secretary asks who they are, tell them I need to talk to these guys. I am not kidding. You need to talk through this and ask questions, or let them know, I've made a decision to do this. And also let them know a couple of other things. Talk to them. Where have you fallen into the heroic leadership trap in the last couple of weeks? Steve would say, where have you fallen into the heroic leadership trap in the last couple of hours? But these are great key questions that we need to ask ourselves, because I want you to identify where you're being the hero and saving everything and everyone, and not creating a business that's, and if you're doing that, we're not creating a business, I'm putting too many double negatives there. You're not creating a business that's independent of you. And that's what we really need, is a business that's not totally dependent on me. And the other question I want you to do is, what's the most important action you could take that demonstrates that you're working on the business? So what decision have you made? Where have you fallen into a heroic leadership trap? And what's the most important thing I could do that demonstrates I'm working on the business? Write those down. I'm going to leave that there for a second, and I'm going to repeat them one more time before I give you my recommendations. What decision have you made about your practice? Have you decided that it's a business, and I really need to learn how to run it like a business if I'm going to go anywhere? Where have you fallen into the heroic leadership? Where, in that case, one of the leadership trap, one of the places, where did I stop delegating to other people? Where are people delegating up to me? Why is it that I cannot take weekends off without giving my mind and my body and my spirit a rest, so I can come back and do great work the next week? And what's the most important action I could do that demonstrates I'm working on it, not just in it? So good. And also write down Jeff, Larry, or Daniel. One of them is going to be calling. So I'm going to give you my recommendation. And I said, and I think that Mike probably pointed out this in the beginning, but I want you to take at least, if you're going to do nothing else, I would recommend this. You know, Steve has a great line about trial lawyers, but it really works for all of us when we look at our practice. Sometimes we're lions in the courtroom or lions in the boardroom, but we're chickens when it comes to managing our firm. Sometimes we're chicken to deal with that employee issue. We're chicken to have that critical conversation that needs to happen. But we're lions when it comes to our substantive work. So we've seen that. I know it happens over and over. But if we're going to break through this and we're going to have a business that serves your life and serves the community in a brilliant way, this is my recommendation. I would do a practice growth diagnostic. I think in my mind, I believe every attorney should do one. And so what it is, it's you spend an hour assessing. You're going to fill out a couple of things at first, and you're going to work with an advisor to assess and look at and improve your practice on the 4 cornerstone areas. Where am I around marketing, client development, time management, staffing, and cash flow? And know that these are systems, and you can, when something's a system, there's a checkbox. You could see A, B, C, and D. Am I doing this, this, and that? It's not this nebulous thing. It's a real functioning thing, and I can see how I'm doing. The other thing that happens on the practice growth diagnostic is something that's called the DISC, D-I-S-C assessment. And it shows where your, for lack of a better word, where your personality and your energies are focused, and where your natural strengths are, and where we need to put your natural abilities to work to maximize some results. There are times when you, being you, are in the way of growing the practice. I'll say that again. There are times when you, being you, gets in the way of growing the practice. And so the DISC assessment helps you. It like nails you and helps you see exactly where you are. So the DISC, if you're going to do one, it's not for free. It's not that expensive, but it's certainly not for free. It's $295, and it includes the assessment tool, a DISC assessment, and that has a full 22, 26-page report, which is brilliant. That alone is worth it for that alone. And then you're going to have an hour assessment analysis with an advisor to discuss the results and make suggestions. So if I wanted one, here's, and I think Mike said to write this down, go to www.atticusadvantage.com. And you should be able to see it right there, but if you put the / get started, it brings you right there to get an assessment. If Jeff or Daniel or Larry doesn't mention it, tell them Mark said I should get one of these. I'm not kidding. It's one of the more valuable things you can do. I'll say one other thing about moving forward. In October, there's a program. It's a workshop called the Practice Builder, the Atticus Practice Builder. It's October 27th and 28th. It's 2 days. It's a boot camp for how to run and build and grow this practice from A to Z. It's brilliant. It's 2 days. It gives you everything you need to know to take that aha moment and build a structure around it and some accountability around it. We're going to be doing a Double Your Revenue workshop. It's a 1-day workshop in San Francisco on November 3rd. That's a great workshop if you've got the foundational pieces in place and you want to see how to double and grow your revenue. And in January, so this program has I want to say something about the Practice Growth Program. It's a quarterly coaching program. So it takes the basics of how to build a firm, and rather than leave you out there on your own to do it yourself, you're working with 25 other attorneys, an Atticus practice advisor, and you're going step by step. You're provided with every tool and go step by step on how to get into that practice growth stage, stay in that stage, and pull out the revenues and the freedom that you deserve. So those are my recommendations, and if I did nothing else, I would do the practice growth diagnostic. So Mike, I'm going to open up. We have a few minutes left, and I'll open it up to questions either written or someone can unmute themselves. And Steve is here as well. I'm sure Steve would help me to jump in.
Yes, we do have a couple of questions sent in. And just to remind folks, if you do have a question, you can do that 2 ways. You can either text in your question to me, or you can click the hand icon next to your name on the dashboard, and I will unmute you. I'll call on you so that you can ask your question or make your comment. Our first question comes from Erica, and Erica's question is, I specialize in immigration law. We have major changes often. Therefore, I attend CLEs often to learn about the updates. Should I just stop attending the CLEs?
No, of course not. And it depends on, well, no, because when you're practicing, the practice of law is always changing. We've got to keep up with those changes. So no, we're not saying don't do that. But there's a point where you've been practicing for 7, 10 years that you really know most of it, and you're keeping up, and you have to keep up in most states for your CLE. What we're saying is that we have to shift our mindset from that's one element of my development, but I now have to shift and develop my owner skills. And I've got to put my management owner skills at a level higher. I've got to invest the same kind of time and money and energy that I did to get my law degree, sometimes to getting and understanding how to be a great owner for the law firm. So no, we don't give those up. But the focus and the attention is different.
Okay. Our next question comes from Paul, and Paul asks, in a multi-partner firm, should all partners do the practice growth diagnostic?
Absolutely. It's because you're going to see it on an individual basis from your own time management and your own marketing. And then you can compare notes. And the thing that the partners love to see is the DISC behavioral profile, because it's just shocking how this report nails your behavioral profile, your personality, and then when you show it to your partner, you'll have a good laugh at when people can name what you've been doing, and it's quite wonderful. So yes, absolutely.
Okay. Our next question is from Ed. Ed wants to know, is it only for owners? And I'm thinking he's talking about the diagnostic again.
Yes, the diagnostic. Here's the thing about this, is that Atticus only, for starters, you're going to get the Atticus for 25 years, we have only worked with and will only work with lawyers. But if we did the diagnostic on one of your employees, they may see many things that they could do, but they have no authority to get anything changed or done. We need to start with, we have to shift the mindset at the leadership level first, and then we can work on other people. Certainly, as soon as you do the DISC, you're going to want them to do the DISC, and that's great. They can do a DISC, but the diagnostic really should be done at the shareholder level, the partner level, the small firm owner level.
Okay. Our next question comes from John. Should all attorneys be in referral-based networking groups like BNI or something similar to that? What if one attorney is shy?
So the great thing about marketing is one size does not fit all. And that's why, by the way, doing the behavioral profile the DISC behavioral profile is critical to understand your marketing strengths and weaknesses. Mike, I'm speeding it up because I know we don't have a lot of time. Mm-hmm. But one size doesn't fit all. And so if you're more private or even introverted, there are great marketing opportunities for that person. And if you're extrovert and outgoing, there's great marketing opportunities for that person. But in general, if you're saying that I think it's a good thing to belong to these groups, absolutely. But all groups are not created equal. They don't all work very well. We're a very strong proponent of referral-based marketing, but turning it into a science so that we can get clients knocking on the door on a regular basis.
Okay, I have a few more questions, so Mark, it's up to you how much time you have. We have Lynn asking, I'm a sole practitioner, no staff, have to do both sides, both on and in. What recommendations do you have for a solo practitioner, especially if you have a niche, not general practice? My personality is more in.
Yes. Mike, what's the opening of that? Say the opening again. Is there any staff with her?
This person is no staff, and it's a solo practitioner.
Yeah, so this is so great. You really need to, the first thing we want to do is shift our mindset and get, okay, I'm in it right now, and I've got to do a lot of in it work to get it to go. You know, I've got to get money in the door. but my mindset doesn't have to stay in it. I can shift to on it. And what's the first thing I need to do in working on it? Now, I'll tell you, it's not the answer that a lot of solos want to hear, but usually the first thing we have to do is we have to invest in a legal secretary or secretary so that we can start delegating some work in to free us up to do a little bit more marketing. It's not the answer that most of us want to hear, but it's usually the most significant thing we could do at first. Mike, I'm a little concerned because we're at our hour, so here's what I'm going to suggest. If you have a question, still have a question, Mike, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but when you speak with Jeff or Daniel or Larry, either ask them a question. It may be for me or Steve to answer, but at least they can take it and they can get you that answer. Because there's still, I know it's an important question and I don't want to ignore it, but I'd go through Jeff or Larry or Daniel. And by the way, if you wanted to email any one of them, you could put their first name and then put Atticus online after it, .com. But they'll be one of them will touch base with you very soon. Mike, would you address that a different way? Would you say that any other way?
No, that's absolutely fine. We do have a few other questions that were typed in, and we have kept track of those. And so if you've typed in a question, we'll make sure that Larry, Jeff, or Daniel follows through for you and gets you the answer to that. But I want to thank you, Mark, Steve, and everybody else who has come in today to listen to this session and to think about, what Mark has said, but also to take action and to move forward. So without
no thinking about it, right, Mike?
Exactly, no thinking, no thinking. We've done enough thinking during the session. Now's the time to actually take some action. So thank you, everybody. Please be on the lookout for messages from us about future webinars coming up the rest of this year, and as well as the programs that Mark mentioned. You can ask us about those. We'll be happy to tell you about them, give you some more information. So thank you, Mark, and thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone.